Paul Brunton. Spiritual wisdom couched in words has always been available through the Vedas, the Upanishads, Dhammapada, Tao Te Ching, the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, the Zen Avesta, the Bhagavad Gita, and scriptures of other spiritual traditions. But the word is not the thing. The word water is not water. It will not quench our thirst. On the other hand, if you have a sip of water, the miracle takes place. Apply the same analogy to spirituality. You can pride yourself on book knowledge, but this is like holding on to the word water. How then can we experience the truth, and what is the purpose of all the scriptures? Sages and saints would not have left behind those holy words without a purpose. A sage lives the truth every moment of his life, and people from all over the world, attracted to him by his teachings and life in truth, live in the proximity of that truth, imbibe that truth, and finally experience that truth. Because, in that particular human frame, they see the truth of what the scriptures describe. When we read about the lives of Bhagavan's old devotees, we see that Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, like Jesus Christ and the Buddha, lived the truth every moment. He was available all the 24 hours, and there were no rules and regulations. His doors were always open, and his old devotees lived in his proximity, witnessed the truth walking on two legs, talking with its mouth and looking through its eyes. I am indeed fortunate that I could live with them and see how they too were steeped in the truth. When reading about them, the truth seeps into our heart, perhaps imperceptibly. That is the only way you can have a link with the ultimate truth, which otherwise looks unattainable. The next devotee is a luminary who came to make the whole world know that the darkness is not true. He was Raphael Hurst, the first Western devotee of Bhagavan, who openly declared that by the grace of Ramana Maharshi, he was blessed with the inner vision of illumination. Popularly known as Paul Brunton, he was a great writer who went through many ups and downs in his spiritual life. You will be surprised how much it is like our own life. Sometimes we feel we are on a spiritual peak, and at other times as if we are in an abyss. But when we depend on and surrender to the higher power, there is never a failure. Paul Brunton wrote, "My own final illumination happened in 1963. There was this bomb-like explosion of consciousness. It came of itself, and I realized that the divine had always been with me and in me. The word I was pronounced in me. I saw that it was the only reality. I am is the foundation of truth and reality of the whole existence. Although I had descended deep within my being and experienced timelessness, I was still able to live in my surface being and experience time. The two experiences went on side by side, and I saw my body as a mere shell and all the other people's bodies as shells. I felt like a bird free of all desires and really detached from everything. I was not the body, and felt so free of it that I knew I could not die, and that in the real I would always be able to live, for I am is God. Deep down within my heart, I lived in an everlasting now. What a consummate, inspiring summing up of one's inner realization. That self-realization can be attained by you and me through self-enquiry is amply proved by Paul Brunton's life. The way Paul Brunton was guided by the higher power throughout his apparent struggles, how whenever he was falling down, the higher power was helping him up, all of it is a great fillip for us and a pointer to every seeker that if you surrender to the higher power, which is the I am within each one of us, within each one's heart, that higher power will lead us through. He adhered to that and followed the instructions so arduously that he was led to a state of perfection. That is why when I first read about his attainment in 1963, I was convinced it is possible. It is a very strong force which we have to imbibe in our own spiritual life. When Brunton was in school, his geography master's voice uttering the word India sent quivers of joy through his body. Later, when he located it on the world map, he again experienced quivers of joy. This sound, India, and his locating it in the map was the beginning of his quest for the true self, for the truth.
This strong urge to go to India at that tender age was not just a fleeting thought, it was the higher power guiding him. In his adolescence, Brunton felt a widening chasm between himself and his surroundings. He even wanted to end his life. But the very thought of ending his life aroused in him a curiosity to know what is death and what is after death. From where could he have got this urge to know except from the higher power? He then went to the British Museum's library and studied all the theories on death. He pored through texts and treatises on occultism, mysticism, Rosicrucianism, Buddhism, Christian mysticism, and yoga. He was so interested in knowing more that he joined the Theosophical Society. Strangely enough, he soon dropped his interest in mysticism and occultism and put all of his attention into learning journalism. This was again the higher power guiding him, this time to be a great writer. He started writing powerful passages that attracted the attention of commoners and scholars alike. For instance, he wrote, "What did Jesus Christ mean when he rebuked those who sought to enter the kingdom of heaven like thieves breaking in over a wall?" Jesus meant that they were trying to enter without giving up their ego, without denuding their consciousness of ego's rule. Who are these robbers? They are the seekers of occult powers. But even while he was becoming well known for his incisive writing, there was this conflict lurking in his mind. Should I continue with journalism and become famous, or pursue spiritual practices? This was the struggle within him. He met two teachers, Alan Bennett and Thurston. They tried to point him in the right direction, but it was a turbaned Indian who influenced him and encouraged him to go and do research in Indian yoga.
There was another change in his life. He got married and also had a son, Kenneth Hurst. I had the good fortune to meet Kenneth and get from him some of Brunton's unpublished manuscripts, which were later published under the title Conscious Immortality. After Brunton passed on, Kenneth brought out 16 volumes of his father's writings. A significant turning point in Brunton's life came in 1930 when he was 32 years old. There was a strong urge in him to know and investigate what Indian yoga was. He soon sailed to Mumbai, determined to find out about the greatness of India's seers, sages, and saints, and their centuries-old wisdom. He traveled throughout India, meeting, questioning, and observing sages, saints, messiahs, mystics, and astrologers, all of which resulted in the famous awe-inspiring book, A Search in Secret India. During these travels, he came to Chennai. There, in the hermitage of a silent sage, a man named Subramanya accosted him and insisted that Brunton come with him to meet his master on the hill of the Holy Beacon. Brunton refused. Not put off, Subramanya told Brunton that he would come and see him the next evening. After he returned to his hotel, Brunton went to see an author called Venkataramani, to whom he had a letter of introduction. The next morning, Venkataramani took him to his guru, the Shankaracharya of Kamakoti Mutt, the pontiff of many Hindus in South India. On being asked about any genuine spiritual master that he could meet, the Shankaracharya extracted a promise from Brunton that no matter what, he would go to the hill of the Holy Beacon and meet Ramana Maharshi. When he returned to his room that evening, whom would he see there but Subramanya, waiting to take him to his master, Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. It is absorbing to read about how his first encounter with Sri Bhagavan took place. There is no logical support for it. It is as if it was mystically planned. In the divine scheme of things, Paul Brunton's coming to India was to reveal to the world the great spiritual splendor that Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi was, is, and always will be. It was left to Paul Brunton to open the dark passages, hiding the truth through his powerful writing. He threw open the doors for seekers all over the world to know that there is light. Paul Brunton came to the Maharshi in 1930. Being an intellectual and a journalist, he had prepared 32 pages of questions to put to the Maharshi. These were well thought out questions because he had also studied mysticism thoroughly. But when he looked at the Maharshi and the Maharshi looked at him, he was drawn into a silence unfathomable to the mind. Not a word could surface either from his mouth or from his mind. He was filled with a silence and peace which he had never experienced before. He felt,
There is something in this man which holds my attention as steel filings are held by a magnet. I could not turn away my gaze from him. Later, when writing about the great significance of this first encounter with the silent, pure presence of the Maharshi, Paul Brunton wrote, "I became aware of a silent, resistless change taking place within my mind. One by one, the questions which I had prepared in the train with such meticulous accuracy dropped away, for it does not now seem to matter whether I solve the problems which hitherto troubled me. I know only that a steady river of quietness seems to be flowing near me, that a great peace is penetrating the inner reaches of my being, and that my thought-tortured brain is beginning to arrive at some rest." Soon he returned to North India in his quest for spiritual masters. One of those he met was a traveling yogi called Chandidas. The moment he saw Paul Brunton, he gave 3 predictions. All 3 predictions came true. The third one was particularly significant. Chandidas told him, "You will return 2 more times to India, and you will fulfill karmic ties with a sage who is waiting for you." This sage waiting for Paul Brunton was Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. Its travels took a heavy toll on him. He fell ill and was terribly affected by that. His ill health troubled him so much that he wanted to go back immediately to England. Fortunately, there was a tug-of-war within his mind. Even during that illness, the images of all the sages, saints, and mystics he had met kept flashing inside him like in a slideshow. On evaluating all of them, it was Ramana Maharshi's image that shone out. Now, look at this strange phenomenon. Here is a person who is determined to go back to England. By some freak chance, this slideshow takes place within his heart, and he decides to go back to the Maharshi. Immediately after, a letter arrives from B.V. Narasimhaswamy, a biographer of Ramana Maharshi, asking him to return to Arunachala and the Master. Then, when he arrives in Chennai from Mumbai on his way to the Master, the author Venkataramani meets him and tells him about what the Shankaracharya had told him. "Your friend will travel all over India. He will visit many yogis and listen to many masters. At the end, he will have to return to the Maharshi only." How prophetic this was. Because of this, after Ramana Maharshi dropped his body, Brunton would send his friends to India, telling them, "Go and see reality living in human form. Go and see the Shankaracharya of Kamakoti Mutt, but most importantly, go to Tiruvannamalai and experience the unseeable force of the great sage Ramana Maharshi, though he is not physically available."